So good evening. I'm delighted that you are here as we welcome Christian Willauer to give us our program this evening. Christian is a volunteer with the H.O.M.E.S, the H.O.M.E.S campaign, which is a statewide advocacy organization associated with housing issues. H.O.M.E.S stands for Housing, Opportunity, Mobility, Equity, and Stability. Christian has worked in the field of community and economic development for more than 20 years and currently is principal of a consulting practice specializing in affordable housing development. And we all know how difficult it is in virtually every community in the country to find affordable housing. And so she specializes in project planning and fundraising for community-based organizations. She's glad to bring her experience here tonight as she shares her history working with the affordable housing sector to the policy space, because she's learned that many of the solutions to ensure that every Delawarean has access to safe, affordable housing can only be addressed through policy change. And one of the things that our group is interested in on a regular basis, Christian, is what are the policies under consideration? What are the legislative actions being proposed? How can we advocate in support of work that is meaningful in advancing justice issues in our community? So we are delighted to have you here.
Well, thank you very much, everybody, for being here and for the opportunity to speak. And I am a volunteer with the H.O.M.E.S campaign. And the H.O.M.E.S campaign is a group of residents who just have come together around housing issues to work on identifying what the problems are, what the solutions are, and then advocating for those policy solutions. So we have been active since before the pandemic, 2019, 2020. But during the pandemic, it became really clear that water access was a housing issue. And that was because during the pandemic, the city of Wilmington had decided to stop, like many jurisdictions around the country, to stop doing water shutoffs. But then in 2021, they said they were going to start doing water shutoffs again. And, it was a time when a lot of people were still locked down. And we know that if you don't have access to your house is, uninhabitable according to the code, but also very difficult to live in. And so we started doing a lot of outreach, taking information around, doing door knocking, sharing information about assistance that was available, because we wanted to make sure that people didn't, who are at risk of losing their water, were able to access the resources at that time. And I see that somebody's raised his hand. I don't know what that means.
Sue, we only see you. We don't see Christian.
Yeah, I don't know why that is. I see all of you across the top, and I tried doing focus mode on the speaker.
I'll tell you what, I'm going to start doing share screen, and then it should solve the.
All right, let's see what happens when you do that. Yeah, let's give that a try.
So I'm going to give a little PowerPoint presentation about water issues in Wilmington. Can you see that? Do you see the presentation now?
Yes.
Okay, great. So the H.O.M.E.S campaign: housing, opportunity, mobility, equity, and stability. And one of the things that makes the H.O.M.E.S campaign a little bit different than other housing advocacy organizations is that it's all volunteer. And also we really try to engage people who are impacted by the issues in identifying what the problems are and what the solutions are. So this is a rally, which I believe many of you, or some of you definitely were there. This was a rally around homelessness last fall. So we started this Water for All campaign, which was basically to address access to water in the city of Wilmington, and to stop water shutoffs during the pandemic. And that has grown into a larger effort of looking at how water affordability is impacting city residents and people who are served by the city of Wilmington's water utility, and also like what the solutions are. And this is I really consider water access one of these things that's kind of a current structural racism issue, current systemic injustice issue that we can really change uh, today. So this is why we're active on this issue because it's impacting people's lives, but we're also active on this issue so that we can address something very specific and kind of dismantle systemic inequities. So that's kind of just to give a framework for water access issues in the city of Wilmington. And now we're going to go into some of the numbers. So I hope you'll stick around and really go in depth, because the challenge with a lot of these issues, and I know Sue, teaches a course, but the challenge with a lot of kind of systemic inequities is that they're like baked into the system. So what we wanted to talk about tonight is how water pricing and water collections policies impacts some groups differently than others, and how the inequities are baked into the system and what we need to do to change it. So fines, Wilmington's been increasingly using fines and fees to generate revenue. It's a larger issue. We're just going to talk about water tonight. But basically, as fines and fees rise, more people have difficulty paying. It causes financial hardship, especially among people who have lower incomes. And when you can't afford to pay the fine or the fee, there's additional costs on top of that. So delinquencies and the increasing costs of collection not only impact the person who owes, but it also impacts the city that's trying to collect. So we talk about it as high pain, low gain. Like trying to generate revenue using fines and fees is a high pain, low gain approach to kind of city budgeting. So going into the Wilmington city budget, there are three parts of the Wilmington city budget. There's the general fund, which pays for general city services. There's the water sewer fund, which pays for water and sewer services. And then there are special funds, which pay for specific activities. And totally, it all adds up to, to a little bit more than $250 million every year to run the city. And can I just ask, is anybody here, on the city water system? Like, do you get a bill from the city of Wilmington water utility?
The church does.
The church does. Okay. So,
I don't know, Mike, do you live in the city? Do you get a water bill from the city?
Yeah, he's giving us a thumbs up. And then we'll go into this, fines and fees and water billing. Like everybody pays the same rate for their water. It's like a flat tax. So, no matter how much money you make, you pay the same amount for water. And so the fee for water service is supposed to be the charge that it's supposed to be a charge that's actually related to like the cost of providing that service. That's what a fee is. And a fine is a charge for not following rules. So we're talking tonight about water bill fees. Wilmington's water utility actually serves more than the city of Wilmington. It serves all of the city of Wilmington, but also quite a bit of the northern suburbs, and then also parts of Newcastle. So those are the people who get a direct bill from the city of Wilmington. And then in addition to that, Wilmington has a it has a sewer treatment plant that serves pretty much all of Newcastle County with a few exceptions. So all the water gets piped up to that sewage treatment plant, and it's Wilmington's water utility that handles all of that. So there are two sets of customers in Wilmington with the Wilmington water utility. There's the direct customers who get water and sewer services, and then there are the just the people who are because they live in Newcastle County are using the sewer services, and Newcastle County pays the city of Wilmington like a flat rate for treating all of the water that's all the sewage from Newcastle County that's on pipes. So, just to give you a sense of what we're talking about is that you have a customer base that has not changed, and yet water bill fees have grown more than any other source of revenue for the city of Wilmington since 2003. So over the last 20 years. So Wilmington gets all kinds of income. It gets tax income. It gets wage tax income. It gets net profit tax income, property tax income. But water, sewer, direct user fees, those fees that are paid by people paying the bills, that's gone up more than any other source of revenue. So the person, who's paying for their water has seen their water bill increase quite a bit. In fact, they've seen it increase more than like any other, the water bills have gone up a lot. And you have to remember it's the same customer base. So, and to put it into numbers, there's 37,500 customers. They paid over 40 million more for water sewer services in 2023 than they did in 2003. So it's like a significant jump. Newcastle County also pays, they pay their like bulk payment for the sewage treatment. If you look in this chart here, Newcastle County's bulk payment has really been flat since 2003. It's gone up a little bit, but it hasn't gone up nearly as much as the direct user of water. And that's because Newcastle County has fought tooth and nail to have that number not go up very much. But you can see 40 million, like the money that's generated from the for the water sewer fund has increased significantly. And most of that increase has been borne by people who are paying directly for water. It's like the direct user. And Newcastle County, they haven't really seen their water fees go up too much. You can see, since 2003, Newcastle County's payment for having the sewage for all of northern Newcastle County be treated by the city of Wilmington's water utility, that's gone up by 42% over those 20 years. But direct user fees, like the person who's paying the bill, they've seen their bills increase by 184%. So that's like 3 times. And what we've seen is Newcastle County's portion of the overall, kind of income for water sewer has declined during that time. It used to be in 2003, it was like almost 40%. Now it's gone down to just a quarter. So you kind of imagine the water utility is a load. It's a service. We all have to kind of carry it. But Newcastle County, the people who are using the sewer are kind of carrying less of it today than they were like 20 years ago. And the people who have picked up carrying the costs of the water sewer utility are really the ratepayer who gets their water directly from the city, who are mostly city residents. And the other challenge that we have is that the city uses the water sewer fund to pay for water sewer expenses and general city expenses. So a lot of the water sewer fund goes to pay the public works department, but the city also pays the audit department because of course they have to audit the fund. They also pay the finance department because they have to do billing. But then they also pay like a lot of other costs, indirect costs, about 9 million for services that the city so-called provides to the water sewer fund. But we think a lot of that is just things that have nothing to do with water that the city is charging to the water sewer fund, paying for with the water sewer fund. And you can see that the water sewer fund, the kind of water divisions up there at the top, they've increased by 11% like since 2017. But the indirect costs, those costs that the city is charging to the water sewer fund that are not in the public works division, they're not in the billing department, they're not in the finance department, those have gone up by 43%. So we're seeing the city of Wilmington is increasingly kind of shifting costs onto the water sewer fund that, may or may not have to do anything to do with the water sewer fund. Are you with me?
Indeed.
And that's happening more and more. Right now about the 85% of the spending goes to the water divisions, but we see that about 15% of the spending from the water sewer fund is going to the finance department and going to all these other departments for indirect costs. And we think that, in some ways the city may be looking at the water sewer fund as a way to generate revenue that doesn't involve raising taxes. But it has impacts when you make decisions like that. When you raise taxes, there's a progressive side to it. Like, nobody likes seeing their taxes go up, but at least if you have more wealth, you end up carrying more of the burden. The problem with raising revenue through things like water billing is that it doesn't have that same, it's not progressive at all. It's flat. So you have to pay no matter what your income, and paying $100 water bill or $75 water bill means very different things depending on what your income is. And the other challenge is everybody needs water. Like, it's not as if you can just not pay for water. So the policy choice of kind of shifting costs onto the water bill, or, in my opinion, not getting Newcastle County to pay their fair share of rising costs of the water utility, all that means is that, people who have the least ability to pay are facing this challenge of growing water bills. And the next slide shows that, it gets to a point where the cost of the water outpaces people's ability to pay. And that's really true in the city of Wilmington. Newcastle County, we do have a lot of, variety in different neighborhoods, but there is a concentration of lower income people who live in the city of Wilmington. And there's a significant wealth divide in the city of Wilmington. So, like, who has higher incomes and who has lower incomes tends to break down, in the country, but, also in the city of Wilmington on racial lines, so that the median income for white households who make up about 30% of the population is $67,000 in the city of Wilmington. For Latino households who make up about 13% of the population, it's almost 40,000. For Black households who make up 57% of Wilmington's population, the median income is 35,000. So, and there's also, of the total number of households, 1/2 of Wilmington's households have incomes of less than $50,000 a year. So there are income constraints for a lot of families in the city of Wilmington. Water is a basic necessity, and the cost of water is going up. So what we are finding is that Wilmington's higher water bills have outpaced many residents' ability to pay. We have learned from the city of Wilmington, because we've been really active on this issue with the H.O.M.E.S campaign for the last, 3-4 years. We've gotten a lot of information from the city of Wilmington, and there's also a lot of information available, like in the newspaper and things like that. And this is from 2021, but it doesn't. In 2022, almost 1 out of every 3 customers is 30 days past due on their water. So there's a significant amount of people who are, like, struggling to pay their bills. And then if you do the math, because of the numbers of people who have incomes of below 25,000, there are a significant number of people who the average cost of a water bill in the city of Wilmington is more than 4.5% of their income, which is what the UN says is the maximum that a household should be paying for water services. So the H.O.M.E.S campaign, based on, like, doing door-to-door outreach, meeting people who were, like, struggling to pay their bills, but also meeting people who had their water shut off. Like, we have been saying water is an issue. The city has really been saying, no, it's not really. Like, if anybody has a problem, just have them call us. But we've been over and over saying, no, there's a lot of people who have water billing problems, just based on like who, if you talk to people in the neighborhoods, a lot of people are struggling to pay their water bill. Um, some people are not, but some people, a lot of people are. And the city, it turns out, we heard in a finance committee last week or 2 weeks ago that the city gets 1,500 calls a week to their 311 center, and 60% of them are about water bills. So it's like there's a lot of people struggling to pay the water bill in the city of Wilmington. The city uses its most harmful collection tactics to collect overdue bills from city residents. And this is where, that it really becomes a health issue and also a generational wealth issue, because the city has this power to collect on what people owe for the water bill, which is they can do two things. They can that are unusual, like other bills don't have this power. One is they can shut off the water, and two, they can actually foreclose on the house to collect the water, whatever's due. And we, meet people who have like one or both of those things that have happened to them or somebody they know. So in 2021, this is directly from the city. The city sent out 96-hour shut-off notices, which is basically like, if you don't pay your bill now, we're going to shut off your water. So in that period, they sent it off to 635 customers. 83% were residential customers living within city limits of those, of that total. And then by the beginning of November 2021, 103 customers were still without water. So a lot of things could be happening. We don't know. But it could be a vacant property, or person could be living without water, which there are people who do that for a time or for a short time or for a long time. And what we mapped those shut off notices, and what you find, not surprisingly, is that the water shut off notices and probably the water shutoffs map very closely to the neighborhoods where there's more, higher percentage of the population has incomes of below $25,000. So that's what this map shows is that, there was water shutoffs all over the city, but a lot of them were concentrated where people had incomes of less than $25,000. And that's totally understandable, because if you have an income of less than $25,000, the water bill is a bigger portion of your income. So one other dynamic is that in the city, and a lot of times people who rent don't have the water bill in their name, but the landlord will more, in one way or another, pass on the cost of water to the renter. So, if it's not asking the renter to pay the water bill directly, like the landlord pays the water bill, but then they ask the tenant for a reimbursement. Sometimes that happens. Other times they just, increase the rent to pay for increasing water rates. And then always, if there is a big bill, almost always, if there's a bigger bill, like some kind of, jump in the water because there was a leak or something like that, landlords always make the tenant like pay for that. And one thing that we found with the H.O.M.E.S campaign is people talking about how they had been living in a house. There had been something, maybe the landlord didn't take care of a water leak or something like that. There was a huge water bill. The landlord said that they owed that. If it was, they had a Section 8 voucher, but because of the water bill and the landlords contesting that they hadn't paid it, they actually lost their voucher because of a water bill. So water actually has a bigger connection to housing stability than, you might think. So the other thing we found in terms of justice is that even though there's a fair amount of residential customers who are behind in their water bill, this is from 2021, there was 8,000 customers who were behind in their water bill, but they owed a total of $6.5 million. There was other customers. In fact, there was 3,500 other customers that owed 16 million. So, it appears like that there's a lot of customers out there who owe money. Only some of them are residential customers, but the residential customers are the ones where the city uses its most, in some ways it's like most harmful approaches to collections, which is water shutoffs and foreclosures. So the city doesn't take the same approach to commercial customers that they take to residential customers. There was in the newspaper, you can see that, recently it was discovered that some of the hotels in Wilmington owe like $95,000, over $125,000, and they haven't had their water shut off. So it's just a lot of inequity in how the city is handling collections. So that's what this slide is about, is talking about how even though there's a fair amount of delinquency all over, there seem to be decisions about some of the most harmful collection tactics that appear to be trying to collect from. Anyway, people who have the least ability to pay are kind of faced with the most serious collection practices, which is water shutoffs and then foreclosures. And so that's what the Water for All campaign is about. What the Water for All campaign is about is that access to water is a basic human right, and that we have a couple of points. Water bills should pay for water sewer services. They should not be used as a backdoor tax. And the city should take steps to reduce the harm on people who are behind in the water bills because they don't have the money to pay, and make sure that no matter what your income, you can have access to water. So we have these 2024 priorities. One is the city is proposing to raise water rates in Wilmington by 9% this year. We're saying, wait a minute, you need to look at your water bill system. Don't raise rates this year while you're doing that. 2, stop water shutoffs for overdue water bills when the household includes an elderly or disabled person or a child under 5. Those are the people who are most likely to struggle if they didn't have water, and we should extend protections to them. 2, stop using foreclosures to collect back due water bills from homeowners. This is a very contentious issue. The city for many years said they didn't do that, but recently it was published in the paper that they had done it. I think in 8 years there was 17 homes that were homeowners that had been foreclosed on as a result of only owing for the water bill. And we just take the position that if it's one family or 17 families or 35 families, nobody should lose their home because they can't pay the water bill. So H.O.M.E.S is advocating for law to make the city not use foreclosure to collect overdue water bills from homeowners. And then the fourth thing is that we're asking the city to hire an independent firm to explore how Wilmington could create an affordable water structure. So if the cost of operating the utility is going up, how can we make sure that the city is not using the water bill, not adding costs onto the water bill that are not related, but also creating a rate structure so that if a family has a lower income, they could pay a lower water rate, so that water could be accessible no matter what your income level, and that it wouldn't take up a bigger portion of your income for lower income families. So we've been doing a lot of advocacy around this. Those 3 policy initiatives, the H.O.M.E.S campaign, they were all introduced this spring as legislation to Wilmington City Council. Stop using foreclosure to collect overdue water bills from homeowners, end water shutoffs for families with a senior, disabled person, or a child under 5. Set water rates to maintain the infrastructure and make water rates affordable at every income level. There was it got through committee. It was voted out of committee. It went to the full council on Thursday, April 18th. You could see the photos. There was a lot of residents who mobilized and came out and spoke at that hearing and spoke up around these water bill issues in support of these policies. And they all failed. The city council voted them all down. So this just happened. This is where we are. These very reasonable policies, the city has only foreclosed on 17 homeowners who only owed water in the last 8 years. Again, we think 17 is too many, but it's not a lot of people. We think that they should have voted to end that practice, just to maintain ownership. And if you're not paying a water bill and you're a homeowner, there are resources. The city has did get some resources from the federal government to help homeowners with water bills. They also have set aside $250,000 to help homeowners who are behind in their water bill. We think if there's a homeowner out there who's behind in their water bill, the step that the city should be taking is connecting that person to resources, not foreclosing on the home. Nobody should lose their home because they can't pay the water bill. And the second thing, like stopping water shutoffs for overdue water bills for households with elderly, disabled people, or children under 5. Again, it's just a basic, practice that if there's a family out there that gets a 96-hour shutoff notice, they know that because they have a child in the house under 5, they can call and ask the city to not shut off the water. That should be a trigger for the city to connect them to resources, whether it's their own, the city's own utility assistance fund or like other resources. There's some work at the federal level that Representative Blunt Rochester has been advocating to create water assistance. There is no water assistance nationally. So we think that, but no, it was voted down. Like, in fact, it was overwhelmingly voted down. Like all the people there on the right voted no, and there were only 2 people who voted yes. So we were kind of shocked because we thought these were pretty reasonable proposals, but it's not over. It's not over. It's a campaign. It's a water billing campaign. And the reason why we wanted to come here tonight, and we got on the schedule, even before the vote on the 18th. Now, something important did happen, which was the city wrote into its policy that it won't foreclose on homeowners. And it also wrote into its policy that it will send people a water shutoff notice like 6 months in advance of shutting off their water to give them a chance to like pull the money together and avoid shutoff. So all the organizing, like it did move the needle on how the city is handling water, but we don't think that those policy changes go far enough to protect vulnerable residents and to protect like generational wealth. And policies and written things, like they're easy to change. Like the city changed those policies like in a snap, but they can just as easily change them back. Like it doesn't give you much protection to have the city change its policy. The laws give you a lot more, changing the laws makes a difference in a way that just having the city say, yeah, we're not going to do that anymore. Like it's not as, nothing's permanent when it comes to policy, but certainly a law is more hard to change than just a policy that's written by this administration and could change like next year with the new administration. So the reason we wanted to talk with you is because, I've been to some of your events. I've, heard about you. Lynn is actually in her work with the Campaign to End Debtors Prison, has been connected to this work in Wilmington around water billing. So I, familiar with your work and your group. And in Baltimore, which has passed these exact laws that we want to pass, which is to make it not legal to foreclose on homeowners for overdue water bills. And they also have a water affordability rate structure so that lower income people can pay a lower rate for water. It just makes water more accessible. They passed all of these things through this coalition, which included a bunch of religious institutions and advocacy groups and things like that. And so I wanted to have a chance to talk with you. And our group, the H.O.M.E.S campaign it's all volunteer. We've been building a lot of momentum. The issue is something that people, there's a lot of people who are directly impacted who care about. But in order to kind of establish the just like build the movement or, do some coalition building, I wanted to ask you, like, what do you think? And also, like, what do you think is the possibility kind of connecting people around, connecting religious institutions and building a coalition around this issue? I guess I just kind of wanted to have that conversation with you because that's how it worked in Baltimore. It was led by Jews United for Justice in Baltimore, but it was like there was a lot of different religious groups that were involved. And then also I thought I'd share some information about the H.O.M.E.S campaign. You can find it on the web and things like that. But I really wanted to have this conversation. I don't know if that's possible.
Okay, Christian, if you would like to stop sharing your screen, then we can move to the gallery view and see everyone who's here. Hello, Norman, Judy, how are you? So first of all, thank you, Christian, for sharing that information. There are often discussions of principle and more abstract objectives. When you see numbers, when you see the data, it puts a compelling story together. So thank you for sharing that. Roger, you have your hand up. I think this is not about only seeing me on the screen. So go ahead.
I just wonder, years ago, I'm talking maybe a decade, there were articles about water bills and that we should be prepared for water bills to go up dramatically over the next decade. And certainly they have. And I wonder if what we see in Wilmington is a failure by the city to invest in water infrastructure. And now they're trying to catch up. And that infrastructure could be leaking pipes. It could be performing all the tests that are necessary to qualify water. There was just a new one, I think, by the EPA for PFAS products. And some utilities will incur, many thousands of dollars of costs to make sure that the water is treated for PFAS. Up in H.O.M.E.S, we have dry cleaning fluid that's leaked into the aquifers, and the only cure for that is spray it and let the water, as it sprays, the water will be release of some volatiles, and that would bring down the dry cleaning solvent. But do you know if the bills are going up because of infrastructure issues and not just cost of the water?
Well, infrastructure issues, like the cost of the water reflects infrastructure issues. So absolutely, water is like water delivery. I won't say water creation because, we all know the water cycle, it doesn't get created, but the water gets purified and then it gets, piped to people's houses, it gets delivered, and then like the water gets taken away and the sewer, like all of that demands like an incredible amount of infrastructure. It demands pipes, it demands like purification, it demands a lot of testing. Like it's all very expensive. And it's all handled by this water utility that is owned by the city of Wilmington. And for those 37,000 customers, plus, the Newcastle County residents who get their sewer treated by the water treatment plant. And it's all paid for by like the people who are the ratepayers, right? And Newcastle County. It's paid for by those people. But the thing that happens is that back in the 1980s, before that, there was a lot of federal support for this kind of infrastructure, for water infrastructure specifically, that got cut like through the whole process of like, cutting taxes and cutting that, funding for cities and things like that. Like one of the things that got impacted is that funding for water infrastructure got cut. And so as a result, before, water infrastructure used to have a lot of support federally, but then, the 80s, the 90s, that federal support went away. So every little utility had to like manage its own business based on its income from its ratepayers. And that's what's driven water costs up like nationwide. Wilmington is not alone in having water costs go up. And this is why it's like an important issue, not just for the city of Wilmington. You can't just go out there and be like, oh yes, don't raise the cost of water, because that really doesn't make sense. We do have to maintain the infrastructure, and it costs like good money. And we have these problems, like you point out, where you have to, purify it because of contamination that we like the EPA just said, like, this is a big, big problem and it's going to cost millions of dollars. But so this issue is a local issue of affordability, collections practices, decisions that city council can make. It's also a national issue I just think about highways. Like if we asked, the city of Wilmington to maintain like its section of I-95, it's just like everybody would agree that makes like no sense. And I kind of feel like water is one of those things. To have this extremely decentralized, unsubsidized, like completely fragmented approach to delivering water, a basic human need, we really should, in my opinion, we should go back to where we had more federal investment in water, in national water infrastructure. I think it's a matter of national interest to make sure that everybody has access to water. So in addition to having this be a local policy issue, it's something we can talk to our state, our state and our federal, specifically federal officials about. And federal officials can do two things. One, and Representative Blunt Rochester is very active in this. One, they can advocate for more resources to come to and President Biden with his Infrastructure Act, he's the first president in 20 years to send money to invest in water infrastructure. He's made an incredible investment and sent billions of dollars to the state to invest in water infrastructure because he and others have recognized this is a federal, this is a problem that needs federal investment. You can't just expect every little utility to come up with all the money that's going to be needed to make sure that we maintain these systems. So that's the good news. I'm happy that we finally kind of have at the moment like an administration at the federal level that sees the need. But there are things that the city of Wilmington could be doing differently that would be more fair and would be more equitable. Like they could change some of their collections practices. It would reduce the harm on low income citizens. And it would, you know, you could do that and you could still pay attention to, okay, how are we going to maintain our infrastructure? Where are we going to get the money to maintain our infrastructure? Because people don't have the money, like it just ends up that they just kind of suffer. You know what I mean? Like they go and they pull together the $1,000 to pay the back due water bill, but then they don't have $1,000 to pay for medicine or things like that. So we think something needs to be done around water access for lower income residents.
Has there been any discussion, as other cities have done, of expanding city limits? And I know it's very controversial, but should Wilmington gobble up a little bit of Newcastle County to increase their tax base? And then that 15% that comes out of the water and goes to the general fund wouldn't need to happen. Has there been any discussion of that?
You need that, actually. I think Newcastle County could just agree to pay more to the city of Wilmington for the privilege of having like all of its sewage treated by the one facility. Like I think Newcastle County that could help to pay for Wilmington's, like for our water infrastructure. I think they could chip in more. And I don't think you have to change the boundaries to do that. And I think because it would be shared so widely across like so many people, I don't know, 650,000 people, it would be easier to like pay a little bit more across 650,000 people than it would be to pay a little bit more for like the, you know, 8,000 city resident customers who are just like watching their bills go up.
Sandy, you've had your hand up.
Yes. Well, I was going to ask about the Infrastructure Act. That will we be getting some funds that will help us improve the infrastructure for water? And then, I mean, you rarely see people pull their prices down that they charge you, but maybe if we do get funds that help with that, perhaps some of the relief can come to these people who are so vulnerable. Is there anything in the pipeline, so to speak, that will give us some relief in this area?
Well, that's what we're advocating for. We're saying City of Wilmington, President Biden, the Biden administration is sending money to like address infrastructure issues. How are you like using that to also address like these kind of affordability issues and give lower income residents like some relief so that they can have access to water? And we just have not